All right. 12:02. In the interest of time, we will start. I still see some people are coming in, so they might miss the first minute, but they'll get everything that is important, which is the unveiling of the results in a couple of minutes. My name is Christian Bork. I'm Executive Vice President at Léger. I manage our Eastern Canadian research teams. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues. First is Luc Dumont, Vice President of Consumer Insights based out of Toronto. Hi, Luc. And also we have Pablo Stevenson, who is the president and founder of Resac, which is a digital marketing company that's now part of the Léger Group for the last couple of years now. So hi, Pablo. Today we will do two things.
Hello.
We will look at the results from the digital experience Canadians have had with retailers. We unveiled last Tuesday, for those of you who were there, the actual in-store customer experience index. Today will be about digital. But before we actually get into that, because the heart of what we want to present today is, of course, how our ranking of the best online retailers in the country. But before we get to that, just a quick run through the methodology that allows us to actually be able to have that benchmarking study in place and be able to compare retailers across time, but also against their direct competitors. We basically talk to Canadians 15 and over. We give them over 200 websites that they can choose from, and we ask them, which of the following websites did you actually visit over the past few weeks? Now, based on what they click, we then randomly select 4 that they will evaluate in detail. We require that each of the sites that is evaluated as at least 300 online responses for a total of over 20,000 interviews to get us there. So it's impossible to test every retailer from across the country in the WOW Digital. If you do not have about 3 to 4% incidence rate of Canadians visiting your website, then it's hard to find critical mass and get enough numbers so that the data is statistically reliable. That's why we need to limit ourselves to a little bit over 200 websites and or mobile apps. You are then evaluated on 14 dimensions that actually make up the index that we will see a little bit later on. But there's actually over 40 variables where you get evaluated. Beyond what's part of the actual WOW index, we look at main irritants when people visited your website or went to your app. We also look at KPIs and measured sort of conversion rates for you. And retailers can compare themselves again across time and across their the sector that they are involved in, and basically allow them to make better decisions based on our data. Data was collected in the fall, always in the same time, from early October to early December. And again, each of the website that is evaluated here or mobile app are actually evaluated by recent visitors, and they just provide us with how their experience actually went. Before we get more into the details of the results of the actual WOW index, this year, as every year, we have sort of a special section where we want to look at a number of issues. There was the issue of the labor shortage we looked at for the in-store experience. Today, what we wanted to dive a bit deeper into and sort of be able to get Pablo to be with us and talk about his expertise in digital marketing is the whole issue of what's my online, or what should be my optimal online or digital marketing strategy today. So we have data that Luc will present, and of course we'll want to hear what our friend Pablo has to say about those results. So over to you, Luc.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, so as Christian has mentioned, the WOW digital study goes into a lot of detail on a number of dimensions about the experience that consumers have with your website and or mobile app. But we wanted to look at things like web ads, social media content, email, text messages as well. I'll present some sort of overall results in aggregate by sector, just to give you an idea of what's in the report. But what we're really fortunate today to have Pablo with us to give us his expert interpretation of each of the results. So let's start with, 20,000 people were surveyed in this study, as Christian mentioned, and we see that 57% of them say that they've been exposed to internet advertising for one of the sectors in the study in the past 12 months. Of course, that varies by sector. We see that meal deliveries right up there at the top with lotteries and natural products and eyewear. Those are sort of the top four. And then it goes down the list in terms of the exposure. When we saw these results, we also looked at the top 3 retailers in terms of which brands are the most visible online. We saw that Cookit was number 1, Fizz and Shop Santé were part of that mix of the top people benefiting from online advertising and really reaching those eyeballs. But overall, 57% seemed a bit low to me. So I'd love to know Pablo, what you think of this.
Well, thanks, Hugh. For me, it was a very interesting number because it's quite low, to be honest. I mean, when you look at, you visit any website, any app or any page, the first thing that you see, there's ads everywhere. So how can we explain that 57%? Even considering that if we only conduct one search on Google, let's say one search per day, chances are that the first result, our sponsor results, are considered advertising. So the first explanation I would say is that online advertising, SCM, for example, or banner ads are now part of the furniture. I mean, the first banner ad was created in 1994, and we still see the same kind of banner ads today. So it's just part of the landscape of today. So it's very hard for those ads to differentiate themselves because they don't offer necessarily an immersive experience. The second one, it's users have now difficulty to find out when it's an online advertising. I mean, on our latest study that we conducted with DG, we found out that influencer marketing is huge and is growing fast. And sometimes it's not really, apparent, and it's not really in front of you that it's something that has been sponsored or paid. So we don't consider, for example, influencer marketing as online advertising, even when it is. And it's the same goes with other types of influential marketing like this one. So I would say, again, saturation, it's everywhere. So it's part of the ecosystem, but at the same time, we have more problems differentiating when there's a personalized ad in front of us.
Cool. Thanks, Paulo. I'd love to build on that. You mentioned banner ads, but there are many ways of reaching consumers online, right? So one of the things we looked at was looking at the effectiveness of different communication channels in converting to in-store or online purchase. So, how are these things, are the calls to action being really acted upon by the consumer? So we look at this overall, we'll look at it by brand in the full report and by sector as well. But we're seeing that in total, a quarter of the people, 25%, say that they bought something following an exposure to an email, social media post, excuse me, web ad, influencer ad, or text message. So that breaks out into 12% for email. That's, it's clear to me then that email is the way to go. Pablo, would you agree with that?
I'm not impressed about that number, and I find it very interesting. And again, same as banner ads from 1994, email marketing has been there since the beginning of internet as well. The only difference is that today with banner ads and email promotions, for example, we have a huge technology that supports it. I mean, we have segments, we have machine learning, we have artificial intelligence, so we can be very personalized when we're talking to our customer. And just to give an example, email is the only methodology or form of advertising that allows you to name the person directly on an email. This is huge. It's a huge difference. So, and we can have access to the past buying historic of a client, and so it allows you to give you more wiggle room, to be more proactive and interact with your customers. So one of my recommendations is we always try to find a way to convert at the lowest end of the funnel when we're doing online advertising. And sometimes what you should do is try to find ways to increase the loyalty of your customers through a newsletter. So sometimes your advertising should be growing your top funnel instead of only concentrating on the lowest part of that funnel.
Right. Thank you. Well, and I think we'll get back to some of these concepts a little bit later, because we're going to be talking now about sort of an interesting analysis that we did, which is basically visibility versus fatigue, and really looking at whether the levels of exposure may become an irritant or not. So just looking at effectiveness and again fatigue. So on this chart, on this graphic, we have on the right side basically visibility. So the further to the right you are, the more those are the most visible sectors, and then on the left, the least visible sectors. So the fewer eyeballs have seen them. Then if you look top to bottom, we've got basically high fatigue at the top and low fatigue at the bottom. So how do we interpret this? Well, let's look at that first quadrant in the upper right corner. So we're looking here at overexposure. So these are very visible online. A lot of people see a lot of these online advertisements or different types of outreach and engagement pieces, but there's a high level of fatigue. So, you have to think about, are we doing too much and are people seeing us too much, or is there not enough variety, for example? That could be another reason for those numbers. Then we have a quadrant where we see basically poor targeting, right? So poor targeting can mean two things. So very few people seeing something, or very few people seeing too much of one thing. So it's kind of a mix of concepts here. But if you're not reaching a lot of people and there's high fatigue, again, the strategy needs to be thought out well, because you're not reaching enough people, but the people you are reaching don't really want to see that anymore. So here we're seeing e-commerce, we're seeing grocery store corporate site. That's more of the corporate side, not the transactional site. So the flyers and things like that, shoes, insurance, home furnishings, things of that nature. Right below that, we've got the underexposed and low fatigue. So here is where, there's not a lot happening, but, people are fine with seeing what they're seeing if they do see it. So, you have to be aware of that as well. To me, one of the sort of the underexposed, you have to look at saturation, right? So if we look at the last quadrant, which was high visibility, low fatigue, this is where someone's doing a great job at reaching the right people, the right number of times, and being very strategic in in being effective at reaching the right people and not making them sick of seeing your ad. So that's a very interesting chart to look at. On the next page, we're going to look at the notion of fatigue a little bit more closely. We looked at what makes respondents not want to be exposed to a brand anymore. We asked two questions. What are the main reasons for either stopping to follow a brand on their social media or Facebook or other social media, or unsubscribing from emails? One of the main reasons for stopping following a brand or blocking their ads or things of that nature is people say, I've already bought what I want. I no longer need to follow this company. I think a great example of that is appliances. If you've already bought your fridge, stove, and dishwasher, chances are you don't need to buy it again next week. So why send me an email a week later? There's also a lack of promotions and discounts. So people are thinking, well, what's the point of contacting me if they're not going to give me something in return? Frequency is already also an irritant. So people say, you know what, I get too many. And probably not relevant, and often repetitive and nothing new. Very similar for unsubscribing from email. So again, I'm receiving too many, not enough promotions, repetitive content, and one of the same reasons is I've already bought what I need. No need to send me those shoes, I already bought them. So Pablo, how do you grapple with the concept of fatigue? What do you think about it?
I think the elephant, yeah, well, it's interesting because I think that the elephant in the room is definitely remarketing. Like you said, when you're purchasing a product and you're still seeing ads from weeks over, it contributes a lot to the saturation. And I love remarketing. Remarketing has been a huge part of the e-commerce success, but we need to use it wisely. You need to understand the sales cycle of your clients. I mean, like you said, with appliances, you don't retarget the person for 6 months. It doesn't need an appliance every 6 months. So, I mean, there's also the concept of saturation. Saturation doesn't mean conversion, that's for sure. And sometimes what I feel is that brands, sometimes they overspend on some channels and underspend on others. So I think it's a great incentive today to reestablish your media spending strategy. Maybe you should try different things. And one of the ways, what we always tell our clients, you know, do a single channel test in a week, do the other channel the next week and after, and you can see the difference. Those is my mix giving me the results I want. So test and learn, that's the best way to do it, but be radical in the way you're testing your media.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may add, Pablo, we were talking about this. It's brands sometimes insist on having the exact same message, but on different social media who are not the same. It's as if I was a brand. I don't behave the same way in a theater or at a rock concert, but I'm still the same brand, right?
Exactly. Diversity is also part of the success. So not only diversify your channels, but also your messaging, the experience, and how you're communicating with your users. So it's like any investment portfolio, you have to diversify to generate results.
Interesting. So one last bit of information I'd like to share is we looked at the interest basically of the content. How, among those who were exposed to internet advertising, what did they find? Did they find it interesting? Did they find it not interesting, or were they rather neutral? So we can see that 57% of our respondents felt that the content was interesting. Again, I think it's a little bit, a bit of a low number, given the amount of money I think that is spent on these things and the amount of testing probably that goes into, pre-campaign launches, hopefully. Of course, again, this varies by brand and it varies by sector. We're seeing that the natural products and supplements sector is doing really, really well. So obviously they're reaching their people in the right way, which means that the people, those eyeballs, will be reading and probably doing more research and be, they're interested in it. Games and toys is also one that's right up there at the top, along with specialty stores and beauty. So kind of, if you think about it, they're all sort of passion things, right? They're not grocery shopping or buying, eyewear, things that you need to absolutely to do. The top 3 brands across Canada, and keep in mind this is a national study, but Chocolat Favori, which is a Quebec-based brand, Dans un Jardin and Shop Santé, also another Quebec-based brand. What do you think these brands are doing, Pablo, to be right up there at the top in a national study?
Yeah, I find it very interesting because there's a clear difference here. There's something in Quebec that's been done right, especially with this brand. So I would say that when we're talking about online advertising, we're always talking about technology, about data, about knowing your customer. And we don't talk enough about the creativity, creating this connection with the user. And this is, those brands are, I think they really nailed what engage a user. In this case, it's an inspiration, an immersive approach. It's something that created an emotional connection with their clients. So better understand not only the buying cycle of your client, but also what inspires them or what makes them feel an emotion and a connection with your product makes a huge difference. So you invest in technology, but also invest in the connection, also invest in the emotion that people gain from seeing your ads and engagement. So this is I think my recommendation, and we clearly see with these brands that use that approach in a very effective way.
So would you say, Pablo, that these brands understand their local markets and adapt everything to their local markets is basically what you're saying, right?
Totally
in tune with them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
they understand it. They manage to create an emotional connection, not just a rational connection about the product pricing, stuff like that. That it's really classic that we see in remarketing a lot. But they created it's a story. There's storytelling, and there's something that is really strong for these brands to be there.
So they read the Quebec code. On that note, I'll hand it over to Christian.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Thanks. And if I may add on these last 2 brands that you were commenting on, they're also among the top 10 in Quebec in terms of in-store shopping experience. So basically, they exist in the consumer's mind, and basically their ability to transpose what they deliver in store to the digital world is something as well that is quite unique. So thank you, gentlemen, and we'll get back. There'll be a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions for Pablo, for Luke, or myself, please don't hesitate to drop it into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, because I'm sure as we go along, some questions will come up, and again, do not be afraid to add them at the bottom. So let's now look at our ranking of retailers in terms of their best online experience in Canada. We have a top 10. So these are actually top 11, because there's a tie in terms of scores for the ones that are in 10th place. So, but let's call it a top 10. These are those who obtained the best score on the survey on the 14 variables that are part of the index itself. They go from look and feel to how the website assists you in your shopping experience, how can you be autonomous in your shopping, elements of variety, of product quality, and other aspects in how different brands can actually deliver a positive online experience to their shoppers. So let's start with our 10th place. 10th place is Pennington's. Pennington's with an overall score, enviable score of 88.3, one of the best when it comes to actually allowing customers to make new discoveries, that there's always something new in the store when you actually get to their website, which creates a sense of anticipation for your shopper and invitation to come back frequently. They're also among one of the best in terms of look and feel, and also in terms of shopper autonomy. This capacity shoppers have to do what they have to do without any help or any support at all when they are on the website. And they have a 13-point jump in their score this year, so they must be doing something awfully right. Tied with Pennington's in 10th place is Lufa Farms. For those who may not know Lufa Farms, it's basically an urban rooftop agriculture company that basically distributes to your home, based out of Montreal. If they do need to import products from elsewhere, the whole model is based on sustainability, and this is what they communicate to their clients as well. They also have a score of 88.3, one of the best in terms of talking about variety, because it's high on sustainability. What they feature is what's basically ready, or what the latest crops are, and there's always something new on the Lufa Farms website. They also are great in terms of discovery. They try to push new products, try to get you to try new fruits and vegetables that they are offering, and also in terms of loyalty initiatives, one of the best websites that we measure. In 9th place is Lush. Lush also in the top 10 in terms of in-store shopping experience. So again, some of these companies do a great thing in terms of all of that sort of gamification of the in-store experience, the smell good, feel good, touch it, eat it inside the store. They're able to actually transfer that to the online experience, which is extremely important to shoppers. Now, Lush, in terms of perceived variety, inspiration, the capacity of the website to inspire shoppers, and also product descriptions and information supplied on the products on the website are seen, basically makes them one of the best in the country on those specific dimensions. So great score again for Lush. As we move forward, we have Nike. Nike is one of the best in terms of pushing new. Whenever they have a new product, a couple of weeks ago, some of you might have seen that they've created this new shoe, which is based on the Montreal bagel. And as a Montrealer, you could not go online without being directed to, exposed to this product launch by Nike. So they are one of the best in terms of driving this element of, hey, come see us, there's something new. Also on inspiration, shopper inspiration, again, one of the best in the country. And also their capacity to integrate customer reviews of their products is something that is appreciated from Nike. If we move to 7th place, we have Popeye Supplements in the health sector. Popeye's also in Quebec and the top 10 in terms of best in-store experience. Popeyes is great in terms of delivering variety or perception of variety. Loyalty initiatives as well is something that they are big on, whether you shop in store or online. Also, in terms of delivery, when we look at the variables related to delivery, they're perceived as being very fast and accurate in terms of delivery. And Popeyes, again, it's one of those things we were mentioning earlier, Luke and Pablo, about it's people who share a passion. And of course, the employees seem like they just out of the gym, the same as the customers walking in. There's this sort of connectivity between the brand, the employees, and the digital presence, which makes Popeyes in the top 10, both in store and digital as well. If we move to 6th place, we have David's Tea. David's Tea, great perception when it comes to variety that is displayed. Again, being autonomous in your shopping, the look and feel of the website is one of the best in the country in terms of scores based on how their customers actually evaluated them. Everything in terms of the transactional, the process of from product selection to basically exiting the website is something that is seen to be very efficient at David's Tea, and making them sort of in 6th place. Very good score as well of over 90 out of 100 on the digital wow score. 5th place is Lego. Lego is all about, again, this idea of there's always something new. There's always a new product popping up on the website. Come back and see us. And which makes them one of the top in terms of this discovery aspect, which, you basically want to come back. Next, we have Nespresso. Nespresso is the best. We have one variable, which is basically how good are you at replicating the brand experience and the brand promise in a digital environment. And Nespresso is #1 in the country when it comes to being able to do that. So basically, it's the way they execute their brand promise and their brand presence in terms of digital, Nespresso is the reference. Which is interesting as well, because they're also perceived as having great delivery service. Their omni-channel experience is seen as one of the best, but truly #1 when it comes to when you are on their website, you are at Nespresso, you know it, you feel it. In 3rd place, moving forward again, so we're getting into that very, very top. 3rd place is Simon's. Simon's has an overall score of 94.1. So we're getting again into sort of a very, very close to that perfect score. And Simon's is seen or perceived as #1 in terms of variety of what's offered in store, delivery options, flexibility as well in terms of how you can interact with the product, how they follow through on delivery, and again on returns. If you have experienced before, whether you return it online, return it in store, the whole process is seamless at Simon's and allows them to have a score of 94.1. Excellent. Again, what's interesting about Simon's as well, it's a Quebec-based retailer, is that there's no difference in their scores for the digital presence, whether you're looking at their Quebec results or the results across the country. So it is truly a national success when it comes to digital. In 2nd place, we have the SAQ, which is, again, basically where you get your wines and spirits in the province of Quebec. Similar, almost identical to what the LCBO is in Ontario. SAQ is #2 overall, with an overall score of 97.2. Really, what's at the heart of the success of SAQ is their Inspire loyalty program, which basically, whether as soon as you log into your account, they know your preferences, they know what you bought last time, they know what kind of drinker you are. So basically, it allows them to give you advice in the digital, at the digital end, but also once you get in store, you still have your app open because again, while you're shopping in the store, you're in the Inspire ecosystem as you are shopping. You can show it to an employee, they will know who you are. They actually have giant screens, and as soon as they type in your account number, then the person giving you advice on what wine to get knows who you are, what you like, what your preferences are. So this whole sort of Inspire ecosystem is quite unique. They're number one in terms of personalization, Inspire. They're number one in terms of loyalty initiatives, Inspire. They're number one in terms of navigation because you're always within that ecosystem that you've come to know and like. And as well, the capacity of the site to inspire shoppers, but also provide them advice in the digital world. And again, all of that is based on their loyalty program. In number one is a logo you've seen before in this presentation. It's actually Shop Santé, which again is a Quebec retailer in the health and supplements sector. Basically, what Shop Santé has been able to do is they're great when it comes to variety. They're great on giving advice to their shoppers digitally, making new discoveries. They have a star system for customer reviews that's easy to use if you are a shopper. They do a lot of great things in the digital world, but their capacity to deliver one single brand promise, whether it's from their TV advertising to their pre-rolls on YouTube to their digital experience, they have a tone, they have a style, they have a way of talking to their shoppers that is easily recognizable. I mean, you can shop and crack a few laughs. I mean, it's all based on this humor, on this self-deprecation that they have, and it's very quite unique and something we should all look into a little bit more because they have been extremely successful, and we're one of the top 10 stores in Quebec in terms of shopping experience in store as well. As we mentioned earlier, when we actually look at the sort of the WOW index for the digital experience, it's based on a number of variables. It's a weighted index, and it's based on the following. Two variables are tied to visuals, look and feel, consistency with the brand image. This is where Nespresso was number one. We also have the product offering, three variables related to that, three, regarding the actual experience, browsing experience on the website or digital app, the help that is provided to make you more independent, autonomous when you shop. Then we have two dimensions that are not part of the index itself, but that where we do have benchmarking data, because not all of the websites that we actually evaluate are transactional in the same way. For example, we have retail banking that's part of this. There's a transactional component, of course, but they will not deliver a product, or I don't know when a bank would deliver a product to your door. So basically, because we could not compare all the websites on the same dimensions, we left those out of the actual index. We then have post-purchase in terms of loyalty initiatives, and also your omni-channel experience. Can I transition from digital to from the virtual to the real world in terms of shopping in a way that is seamless for the customer? So these are where we evaluate, or how we evaluate the different retailers that we actually look at. And it's a weighted index, so some variables are more important than others in terms of the overall score, and then we bring it back from a score from 0 to 100. And we will look now at different sectors. Food, of course, we've already talked about Lufa Farms. That's where they get their little star. And then you have all the others, from My Online Groceries at Metro in second place, tied with Amazon as well. And then moving down to Costco, Instacart, Longo's, part of the top five. And then you have all of the different players in the food sector. In terms of alcohol and cannabis, SAQ is number 2, we mentioned as well. And if you look at this, between second place for SAQ and 141 for LCBO, those two experiences have to be different to be evaluated so differently. Specialty stores, Nespresso and David's Tea, we've already talked about, but then very close behind is Godiva, Purdy's as well in the top 30 in terms of best online experiences. And a lot of those players in those specialty stores know they need to deliver quality online experience to be in the game. In the pharmacy, well.ca is number 1, and probably they're hoping they are number 1 because they are a digital pharmacy. So they need to be that much better in terms of their online experience, and they are rewarded with first place in the pharmacy sector overall. Moving forward, we have hardware stores. Canac, which is a regional player in Quebec, it's almost, there's a secret handshake between Canac and their customers, both in-store and online. There's sort of this level of connectivity between the two. Ask a Canac shopper what they think of Canac, and you feel that they're describing their spouse almost. So they are always in the league of their own. And all of the other ones, if you look at a pivotal industry as hardware is, none of the others are in the top 100. So is there something that they could all do better to make it up there with some of the other sectors that we are actually sort of measuring as part of the study? Toys and games, Lego is in first place in front of the others. Nike, we mentioned, in 8th place. Look at Decathlon, though, in 17th place, right behind. And look at how tight this is between Decathlon, Arc'teryx, Under Armour, Adidas, Lululemon, even at MEC in 40th place. So a lot of those sports stores tend to be close to the top. And this is where sort of the yardstick is if you want to make it in that industry. A lot of competition there as well. Telco, Fizz is number one by a landslide, from 41st place for Fizz, and then we almost get out of the top 100. Fizz is also sort of a discount online brand that you can purchase in the province of Quebec. They do exceptionally well as being visible online, and sort of truly an example in that sector that we should all look into as well. Beauty, Lush is in first place. Sephora right behind in 14th place. Yves Rocher as well, highly ranked in 17th place for the beauty sector. Couche-Tard is number one in the convenience store sector, clearly in terms of eyewear, just in front of Bon Look for that industry. In natural products and supplements, Shop Santé and Popeyes are the top two that we talked about. Lotto Quebec is 116th place. The private players, Bet99, Poker Stars, Jackpot City, are far behind as well in the lottery sector. In terms of apparel, Pennington's is in our top 10. You saw a minute ago. Lacoste is right behind in 13th, 14th for Jack and Jones, 29th for Reitmans. Lots of competition in that sector as well. For shoes, Spring, or call it Spring, is in 64th, first place in its sector. For lingerie, it's actually Aerie in 27th place, which is first in their sector. Bisou in the jewelry and accessories is number one, and Chapters Indigo for the culture, arts, and recreation sector in front of Lee Valley Tools. Not easy to be in front of Lee Valley. They also have a quite exceptional online presence. In insurance, so in sort of the retail component of insurance websites, SSQ is first, Beneva in second, TD Insurance is in third place. In terms of financial institution website, in terms of retail banking, RBC is in front of Desjardins, which is just in front of Tangerine. And then all of the other ones are sort of within the same sort of group afterwards. And Centris, which is in first place for real estate, followed by the other players that we actually look at in the sector or the real estate sector. Now, of course, we cannot look at individual scores for all of these companies. They're evaluated on 30-odd variables as well. We would be here all day, but this is just to give you an indication of sector rankings, which could be of interest to you as well. So we'll leave it at that for now. We want to leave time for Q&A and maybe get you out of here before 1 o'clock, because you're probably all stepping into a 1 o'clock meeting, regardless of where you are. So quickly, we'll turn it over to questions. So I'll read them out, and Luke and Pablo, please jump in whenever you want. Well, the first one is, we can answer that as well. We don't see automotive as a category. We did try to cover it about 2 to 3 years ago. The issue we had with automotive is that they're both the corporate websites and then the actual dealer websites. And we didn't know, do you cover just the manufacturer website or the hundreds of websites that are tied to the actual dealer networks? So that's why we decided that either we did we went sort of halfway in terms of doing the job, or so we basically stepped away from it. But the reason why we included it in the first place a few years back is, of course, it'd be very interesting to see who does best in that industry sector. But unfortunately, as you mentioned, it is not part of the study and how we measure it now. And because we didn't know how to resolve the dealer website versus corporate websites of the actual manufacturers and the whole bit. So, but thank you for asking the question. Somebody asked the question, in terms of total visibility of each category mapped, digital spending versus the digital spending in these category. Do you feel, Pablo, that there's some categories that showed lower on in terms of exposure where you think probably they overspend? You know, did those two align basically?
Yeah, sometimes it does. It does, to be honest, and that's what I was saying. That the investment that you're making on social media, for example, or any other advertising channel, is going to have a huge impact on the saturation levels, especially in remarketing. So again, some brands are over investing some channels and under investing other channels, and the idea is not to oversaturate a specific channel because it creates a lot of saturation and ad fatigue afterwards, but try new approaches. So definitely, if we take, for instance, for example, all the cooking subscriptions that we saw that are very overexposed, we know they're very active. And the thing is that there's not only one company, there's many companies in the same industry competing for the same space. So it goes along. I mean, if you're a unique player there, it's good. But if you have a lot of competition, just expect that people see that 3 or 4 times with the same message, but they're different brands. So it will definitely contribute to that overexposure.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's asking a question as well about if we cover philanthropy organizations. We do not. There is another study that does that in part, but we don't get into philanthropy. Would be interesting to see because they do have an extensive digital presence as well. So interesting that you would note that. We have another question. This one is a bit longer and it goes back, I think, to a comment that Luke made earlier. I'll just read it out and you chime in as you wish. A fair number of the top 10 are Quebec-based organizations. Is this a case of Quebec organizations being better at digital experience, or is it more in line with what the Quebec Code that we published a couple of years back says that Quebecers are more appreciative of their local firms and respond more positively because of that appreciation? This idea of being a bit chauvinistic about their local brands versus just the experience being better. I don't know how Pablo or Luke feel about that.
I can take this one.
Yeah, go ahead, Pablo.
Go ahead, Luke. Okay,
no, I was just going to say that being better in Quebec is precisely that, understanding that the local population is appreciative of certain things and acting on them when you create content. Pablo.
Exactly. I mean, I think the agencies, the firms, or the creation or the creativity behind the message are those advertisers are delivering. It's right on with the emotion connection that people have in Quebec. We know them very precisely. That's why they exploit that. I know, for example, that in the rest of Canada, companies tend to use way more data than in Quebec. But at the same time, Quebec, I think they get this instinct for what is going to work and create this connection with the user. So it's definitely I think a bit both in that answer.
Yeah, and if I may add too, is the capacity of those brands to speak the language. You know, the Quebec French that people respond to is not basically the French that you may learn in school anywhere else. I mean, there's a tone there, how they use words. It's not something that easily translates. Like a good brand proposition in English may not sound that great in French, depending on the capacity to actually speak the language. So it's an added difficulty for brands marketing in that province too. And the local brands, of course, don't have that difficulty. For them, it's intuitive. Do you have results by province or respondents by province? Of course, in the detailed reports, we have it by age, gender, region, language, all of these data breaks are available in the final data. Of course, in the interest of time, we did not have enough time to mention that. Somebody else mentioned that there are more Quebec brands on the list, although Quebec only makes up 23% of the sample base at the beginning. So it's basically because scores tend to be a bit more positive. If we continue down, is there a sector for electronic stores? There is, but it's fairly short. Of course, we're always looking to add players, but it was one of the categories near the end that we actually showed as well. Is it possible to see results based on respondents who are already members or subscribers of certain sites? Yes, great question. In the data itself, we do ask a question that if you are already sort of on the client list, if you have an account with them, and how that actually impacts your overall experience. But behind that question, I think, Pablo, is the idea of how quickly can a brand get me to sign on? Because as soon as I sign on, I basically have accepted that company knows something about me, right?
Exactly. What you try to avoid as much as possible in online advertising, it's friction. Something that will, block someone to providing you email or a transaction. So that's why investing in online advertising, it's important and also the experience, the UX experience that you guys are going to deliver to your users to facilitate that connection. It's key for your success. So also invest in your website.
Perfect. We just have a couple more minutes. Yeah, another question, which is, and it goes back to what we were saying. Congrats to Quebec companies. They seem to be rocking the emotional connection aspect. Yeah, do you think it has to do with simpler facts like language connection? I think you're bang on. Again, the issue of over-segmented markets is something that as marketers, whether digital or conventional, have to deal with, is that markets are becoming sort of, hyper-segmented, that it's hard to have one core message that resonates with a large enough aspect of the segment. From that perspective, Quebec's society is a bit more homogenous. I mean, it's going through the same revolutions as everywhere else. The number of Quebecers not born in Canada is steadily growing. Similar realities, but in a way, maybe Quebec is a bit more simpler to advertise to, because 80% have French as the first language they learned as a child. All right. Perfect. Well, I don't see any more questions. It's 12:50, which will probably give you a quick 10 minutes to grab something to eat or drink before you get into your 1 o'clock Zoom or Teams meeting. Again, I wanted to thank you for being here today. You will receive an email later today with this presentation, the link to the actual recording of the presentation if you want to share it with colleagues, but you'll also get as well the same information for the in-store experience, that we published on Tuesday. All of that will be sent to you later on today to thank you for taking the time to be with us on this lovely Thursday. Again, I want to thank my colleagues. Luke, always a pleasure. Pablo, great to hear from you today as well. So on behalf of Leger, I wish you the best of success in the future and a great afternoon. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.